She speaks with her constituents. She speaks with God. She'll be speaking with us today on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Montrose Conference Room at the Horry Georgetown Technical College Foundation. We're focused on public service, and we're visiting with one of our public servants, the chairman of Horry County Council, Liz Gilland. Good morning, Liz.
Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Thanks so much for getting in this morning.
Absolutely.
So exciting to be here on campus. Of course, they've got campuses here in Georgetown and Conway, now in North Myrtle, and expanding in other areas. It's amazing.
It really is amazing. They're a strong campus, a strong school for the county.
They really are. We heard last week at a board meeting that they've had a 5.6% growth in enrollment, and their continuing education is exploding. Horry County alone is exploding.
It's one of the fastest growing counties in the country.
Is that right?
And there are some 3,600 counties, I think, nationwide. So we're up there 1, 2, or 3, depending on what perspective you're looking at.
Yeah, what are some of the other counties? Do you know any about what some of those others would be, or even states?
Orlando.
Orlando,
yeah. We often are second to Orlando in several counts. But we're number 1 in family resorts, popular with the people. So that's kind of a nice thing.
Is that right? What's that been like for you, an actual native of the county, to see some of that growth here in the area?
It's amazing. When I was a child, in the 50s, Myrtle Beach was a pretty sleepy little town, and in fact, up into the 70s, you would still close down the main street after Labor Day and not open it up again until first of the summer. Memorial Day, but we had a small beach cottage like a number of Conway folks did, and our house was on 22nd Avenue South, and Ocean Boulevard was a 2-lane dirt road at the time.
Wow.
And my sister and brother and I, up into the 60s, used to play games in the front yard, and there was one game that had to do with the traffic coming by, and sometimes we would have to wait 5 minutes for a car to come by.
No.
So it was really fun.
Golly,
yeah.
Liz.
That's a lot of changes.
I'm sure.
And I came back home in 1990, just about the time we really kicked it into high gear with the growth. So every time I drive on 544, in fact, coming here today, I thought, well, there's something else that's being cleared. And it is amazing how quickly we're growing and changing.
It is.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary.
For folks not natives of the area, I'm from Durham, North Carolina, and of course, being down here since '96, to see some of that explosive growth even in this short amount of time in the last 8 years has been amazing.
When I'm out of the county and I talk to people who are familiar with Myrtle Beach, I ask them if they've been here in the last 5 or 6 years, and if they say no, then I'll say, then you have a surprise waiting for you. You need to go down and see what's happened, because it's dramatic, especially if you've been 10 years or so without coming down.
With growth, there's the positive aspects of that, and then what are oftentimes perceived as negative aspects. Now, I don't know what folks perceive as negative, but I know at times there are a lot of difficulties that come with growth, just the recognition of it.
Growing pains, I call them, and that's exactly what we're having in a lot of areas. I mean, it's the obvious areas are with traffic and roadways, the infrastructure needs that we have, and then quality of life. People are beginning to be real cognizant of that, because they're afraid that too much growth in too short a period of time is going to affect quality of life. And that can be true unless we're very careful. So the county council now is I think more than ever before, beginning to recognize the crucial role that we play in orchestrating from the government's perspective how we grow. And I keep saying we're going to grow. We can either grow well or we can grow poorly. And it is up to those of us who are elected or appointed to direct the growth in a way that is positive and not negative. And that's tough.
It is, absolutely. Let's talk a little about yourself, Liz.
Okay.
After finishing Conway High School, going off to Columbia College, and then later, I think, where were you after Columbia College, after finishing?
Went across town and got a master's at USC,
right.
And I majored in English at Columbia College and got a master's in counseling at USC, and then went to Furman University in Greenville for a few years, and loved it. It was my size of school. It was a co-ed school, a couple of thousand people. It was great, and I absolutely loved it. And I learned a lot my 2 years there from the kids that were there. But one of the things I learned about was contemporary Christian music, and it just so happened that one of the students that lived 2 doors down from my apartment in the dorm, my first year there, was a kid from Nashville named Amy Grant.
Amy Grant.
And we got to be great friends, and I visited Nashville a number of times with her over the 2 years, and she decided to transfer to Vanderbilt so she would be at home in Nashville and able to do her recording because it was so much trouble to try to do everything from Greenville. And I moved at the same time to go to Nashville to try to do what I could to spread the contemporary Christian music throughout the country. And stayed there for 10 years trying to do just that.
Golly, now, she was already recording in college. Had she been recording prior to college?
She recorded her first album when she was 16, and it was released when she was a senior in high school.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That would have been tough being a college freshman with your first album having come out a year before.
Well, she was so nonplussed about it. I remember the first time I realized, the kids flagged me into the room one night and said, "You got to listen to this music." And they started playing an album, and I was looking at the cover, and I glanced up and looked at this kid sitting on the floor, and I looked at the cover, and I said, "Is this you?" And she said, "Yeah, it is." And I said, "Boy, I'm impressed. I've never met anyone who's recorded an album before." And her exact words were, "Oh, I'm from Nashville, and in Nashville there's somebody on almost every block that has recorded an album."
Oh, yeah.
And she kind of kept that same humility about it, and has not changed much. We're still very good friends.
Good, yeah,
So,
I bet.
yeah, it's interesting to know someone who is internationally famous, because it really begins to put all that fame thing in the right context.
Right.
If I know Amy, and we're good friends, and she's internationally famous, then anybody else is this. I mean, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Absolutely.
anybody internationally famous has friends that are just everyday people, and so it kind of takes that whole aura away from famous folks for me.
It reminds the folks that really the big pond is a small pond.
Absolutely.
I mean, because everyone's in there together. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
What was that like, Lee? Of course, now you've been in 3 areas throughout the state, here in the Low Country, the Strand, then in the Midlands, and the Upstate before leaving to Tennessee for, was it 10 years?
10 years, yeah. You know, it was interesting because when I was growing up, particularly when I was in high school and then in college, then as now, a lot of the folks that grew up and were educated here would either go away for college or grad school and stay away, or they'd get their college degree and then they would move somewhere else. And at an early age, I decided that I would never leave South Carolina because I love my state, and I wanted to make a difference here. I wanted to be a positive something, have some positive effect on my home state.
You decided that at an early age?
I really did.
Really?
Yeah, and I probably hadn't thought about that in a long time, but your question triggered that. But I remember thinking, I'm not going to be one of those that takes from here and then goes somewhere else to use what I've grown up and learned and been educated to do. And I really had that thought at an early age, so it was really unusual that I even went to Nashville, but I determined when I was there I probably wouldn't go any farther afield.
Right.
And then I became interested in mission work. And that was the other almost route I took. I was at a church in Nashville that was very Christ-centered, Bible-based, and mission-minded. And I had never thought about mission work, and in fact my attitude was, if you want to go and do mission work here, I'll give you a little bit of money, but I don't even want to hear about it, because I was afraid that I would get the call and hear God say, "Go to Africa" or something, and I didn't want to do that. So, but I kind of got tricked into going on a short-term mission trip for 2 weeks one time, and I was not even back from Haiti before I knew I would return to Haiti.
Is that right?
And I did that 4 times. Did a lot of construction work, was there at an interesting time, went back in between 2 of my trips. Baby Doc Duvalier, who had been the cruel dictator there, fled the country. And the last time I went, there had been an uprising among the Christians there, the natives. And I literally went in a van past a little pile of rocks in the road, and the van driver said, "That's what's left of the witch doctor that used to live right over here."
Wow.
That the people had stoned him. And they'd done that in a number of places. So I've had some interesting experiences. I went to Haiti 4 times. I smuggled Bibles into China once.
Is that right?
I spent 2 months in Micronesia, which is little tiny islands in the middle of the Pacific, and on a tiny island called Ponape, and got to the point that I really thought maybe I would do it long term instead of short term, and the doors kept closing for about 6 or 8 months, and I finally said, you know what, Lord, I'm not going to ask anymore about going on mission work, because I thought you wanted me to go in this direction, and 3 times I've tried to go to China for a lengthy amount of time, sort of an unending trip, and the doors closed. So if you want me to go somewhere, that's up to you, and you lead me there, because I'm not going to try to force it anymore. And the next thing I knew, I was visiting some friends in Washington State and got a phone call that my mom had broken her hip, and I flew home to help my parents for what I thought would be several months. And it ended up being, that was August of 1990, and I'm still here.
Just real quick, you got me thinking, what's it like talking to the Lord on a regular basis? For viewers who may not communicate with their God or with God on a regular basis, when you talk about, God, tell me where I need to be, how often do y'all communicate? How does that work exactly?
Oh, what a great question. I have what I think is an unshakable belief that has been tried and tempered over time. I mean, I'm 53 now, and I talk with him casually, and I pray to him fervently, not always at the same time.
Yeah.
We have conversations all during the day, but I'm one who really leans on and relies on the guidance that he offers and the protection. And I honestly feel like there's a path for everyone that is God-directed, and my job is simply to do the best I can to stay on the path. I never expected that I would be in the political realm, and that seems to be the way my path has led. What I do know is that I didn't get this chairman's job by accident. I was simply, this was part of the plan for me. And that gives me great confidence, because my greatest prayer is, Lord, don't let me let you down. You have put me here to do whatever it is you want, and you don't plan bad things and calamities. And, you want me to, you want to work through me so that through me, Horry County can be benefited through whatever I do. And I just have to be his servant as well as the servant of the people.
Those are powerful words, and that's good. The ability to talk about communicating with God, to be able to open up and to know that's happening on a regular basis, driving here this morning, visiting, going to your council meetings on a regular basis, spending time with your mom.
It's a real normal part of my everyday life. It's not a scary, weird, or, out of balance thing. It is what centers me. It's at the core.
Growing up, Liz, do you have brothers and sisters here in the area?
I have a sister who lives in Georgetown. She's married to an orthopedic surgeon who gave me a new knee last winter.
Oh, great.
And she has 4 girls, 4 daughters, who range in age from 24 to 16.
So you have 4 nieces?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I have a brother who was in an automobile wreck when he was a senior at Carolina and went to be with the Lord. So I asked the Lord to say hello to him occasionally, too.
Yes, you're doing that right now. That's right. You're doing that right now. Was there a family business to step into when you came back home?
My
back
father
in
was a surgeon.
Oh, so that's
My father was, in
business
fact,
to
he
step
was
in.
one of only 2 surgeons in the county when I was growing up. There was one hospital in the county, and it was Conway Hospital. There were 2 surgeons, and we lived in the same neighborhood. And so he was very, he was so busy when I was a child that it was tough, because he was such an incredible doctor, and his patients were so important to him, and he did house calls all the time, and so he was a good doctor. In fact, the first time I ran for public office, I was telling someone that today, I put, my yard sign said Gilland County Council. And I did that on purpose because of the family name. I have never married for the Lord's own reason, because it wasn't my idea. And so I still carry his name, and I put that there so people would identify me with him, because I knew that he was a popular doctor, and folks all over. At one time, before we had such an influx of newcomers, he had operated on somebody in probably almost every family in the county.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Who was the other doctor, Liz, when you were growing up?
Ed Proctor.
Ed
Dr. Proctor.
Yeah,
was
so
the
it was
other
Proctor
surgeon
and
in
Gilland.
Conway.
That's
yeah.
amazing.
And his son Lee Proctor is a doctor at Grand Strand Hospital now.
That's right. How exciting.
Yeah.
Do y'all communicate much, or were y'all friends growing up because your two dads were both so active?
We lived in the same
community?
neighborhood.
Yeah.
In fact, they called my neighborhood Pill Hill because there were so many doctors that lived there, and we were outside all the time. Kids back then, at least our neighborhood, we didn't stay inside and watch TV. We were outside from the moment we got up in the morning until dark 30. When we didn't have to go to school, and all the moms in our neighborhood had a bell, and instead of screaming out the door when it was time for someone to come, for your kids to come home, the moms would ring the bell. My mom had a school bell. Lee Proctor's mom had a ding 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 with a little rope, and different moms had different bells. And when you'd hear a bell, we could tell each other's bell, and you'd say, "Lee, your mom's ringing the bell,"
You're kidding.
and you knew that meant it's time to go home.
That is amazing. That is
great?
exciting. Now, is there still a family home place, Liz? Is there a place your parents grew up?
I moved back in with my parents about the time I was elected in 94, 95. They were hitting their 80s and needed a little help, so I moved back home with them. It's 16th and Elm in Conway, and I still live there now with my mom.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Our house was the last residence that Dargan Construction Company built before they started doing all commercial buildings. And it is so well built that it'll be there as long as there are houses in Conway. It's a solid house, and I'll be there. It's the white one on the corner.
Yeah.
That's what everybody knows it by.
What's that like with your mom? And hopefully your mom will tune in sometime. But you've been there with her now, going on your 14th year, or back with her, of course, with her until you were 18, and now back with her. So more than half your life there.
Whew, that's amazing. I'm convinced that's one of the reasons I didn't marry. I would likely not ever have gone into politics, nor would I have moved back in with my parents had I had a husband and children. And so I see it as just part of the plan. And so that's, I can help her, and that's good. And it enables me to do my county council job and not have to have another job. I can live on my salary. It was $15,000 a year as a council member. It's $25,000 a year as council chairman. And because I live at home with my mom, and I'm fairly frugal, I'm not real extravagant about things. That's enough. I'd like it to be more, but it's not, and I don't quibble about that. That's just money. And so that works out well for the county, because they can get pretty much a full-time council chairman for part-time pay.
That's a very good point.
And it is a full-time job. It is an amazingly full-time job.
Share with the viewers how that's full-time, Liz. For folks who may not understand, of course, our focus today is public service, but I'm thankful that we've opened up a little bit about yourself. What all does county council do?
Well, as a council member, I'm used to two regular meetings a month, first and third Tuesdays. Committee meetings. We have 3 committees for each of the 3 divisions of council of the county government. And even as a council member, I tried to go to all committee meetings because that was the best way to learn everything.
Yeah.
And as chairman, I still try to do that. But now the division directors want to talk with me. I'm the point person for the airport issue or the state infrastructure bank. I'm going to Columbia, with the administrator to see about that. I'm the one the administrator checks with on, to keep informed on everything and make decisions for the council. And I have a cell phone and a home phone, and it is not unusual for me to have my inbox on my phones completely filled so that people can't leave messages. I mean, that happens an amazing amount of time every day. And so every now and then I miss returning calls because I can't get to all of them. It's just part of the job.
Yeah, that's right. Now, hopefully you've got a couple of home lines, so your mom doesn't have to retrieve a lot of calls for you.
As soon as I was elected to council, I had my own phone line put in so that it didn't have to bother my parents.
What originally prompted you to run for office, Liz? That's a big deal, serving others, whether it was in that district there, is District 3 or 4? What was 8? Excuse me. Forgive me.
1 through 6 are on the coast.
Okay,
and then you start coming inland.
Yeah.
In 92, I started doing a contemporary Christian music show on Sunday mornings on one of the local radio stations, and I called it the Sunday Morning Show, to be able to play for the folks in this county the music that I loved so much that I missed hearing from Nashville. I knew the artists, I knew about the music. I didn't know anything about being a DJ, but I learned as I went, and ended up having a 6-year run as the number one ranked show on any of the local stations. At the time, I was the top of the charts when it comes to local shows.
How exciting!
That was before Steve Porter and that sort of thing. But one morning, I was playing my music, and I looked at the newspaper to see what was going on, so I could make some comments about county stuff. And there was an article in there that talked about how in the preceding, it was in April, in the preceding 3 months of '92, January, February, March, more than 100 phone calls had come into the county planning department or zoning department about adult entertainment. Phone calls from New York and Florida and Los Angeles. And I thought, for goodness sakes, they know that we are soft on laws, rules, and regulations, and yet we get, at the time, 10 or 11 million golfers, people a year coming in, most of them golfers, and they're going to come flood in because we don't have a lot of restrictions. And the Board of Appeals had just given a variance to one group that became fantails on 501. It was the first time one had gone out in that area, and the article said a second group was coming before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals the next night to ask for another variance.
Wow.
Right directly across from Waccamaw Pottery, which was one of our main attractions for tourists at that time. And so I got on the radio and said, look, we've got to do something. If you feel like I do, that this is not appropriate for where we want to be, this is our county, and we don't want that, we need to take a stand. And so those of you who will, meet me at that meeting tomorrow night, because I'm going to be there. And I think we need to take a stand because we advertise ourselves internationally as a family resort community. And family resort communities and sex-oriented businesses do not go hand in hand. One will kill the other, and it's always the family resort community that will suffer from that. And it started what became a 9-month process. I ended up, I was the leader of an incredible grassroots movement in the county. We even had a referendum, and 76% of the people of the county felt the way I did about it, and it sort of forced the council to put more restrictions, and some restrictions that I had suggested on that business. And as a result, since December of '92, we've not had a single legal adult entertainment establishment open in the county. Now, county ordinances don't apply to municipalities, so Myrtle Beach has had some. But they designated an area for it around Seaboard Commons, and but in the county there hasn't been. Now, it's time to revisit the issue because our ordinance, and I pointed it out at the time, the ordinance was loose when it came to porno shops and things that we've seen kind of proliferate around, particularly in the last few years. And so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about at retreat with my council next week.
That's exciting. Yes, I know that's going on right now, and I appreciate your willingness to get up here from Pinopolis. I saw that you promised a couple of things, Liz, and you pointed out that promising a lot to folks, whether it's voters or otherwise, is a difficult thing, but promised to work hard, play fair. What was the last one?
My campaign slogan. Work hard, play fair, and stay honest.
Stay honest, yes.
Politicians in general, I think, are not thought of as being the most honest and upright of folks. I think the general impression of folks is that too many politicians are crooks. They're in there for their own reasons, and they don't pay attention to, some of the needs of regular folks. And political promises, to me, I take them with a grain of salt, because too often they're just not catchphrases or nice things to say, and you get in office and then you don't follow through, or you can't follow through. I promise to lower taxes. Well, not one single politician can do that on his own. So I decided the safest thing for me to do is promise what I knew I could deliver. And what I know I could deliver was to work hard, and I do, play fair. And everybody knows what that means. And for so long, and politics is not generally fair. And I was the recipient of a lot of unfairness for a number of years on council. And stay honest. We talked earlier about my faith. I need to stay honest. to stay right. And so, I have no desire to fall out of favor with the one in whose footsteps I try to follow. So that's important to me, way beyond politics.
The Lord supported you running for office. Y'all were able to communicate about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, the first time I was asked to run for office, I prayed hard about it, and I got 2 very clear answers, and this was in '92, before I ran. And the answers were, watch this area, but not now. And I thought that was amazing, and so I did. I watched for 2 years, and I realized I'd been prompted by folks to run for one of the seats in Columbia, the State House. And I decided that I was more interested in my own neighborhood, and where I really had a burning, increased desire to serve was right here. At the time, of course, I didn't realize how much what the elected officials in Columbia from this area and from all over the state, how much they affect what we do down here with mandates, with laws that they pass. And so, maybe that's in the future for me. I don't know. But I didn't know how important that was. But it's good to start on the local level anyway.
She had a passion at an early age to help her state, to come back to support the Palmetto State, to find a way. She came back here and then had a passion to recognize to help her local community. And now her community writ large is the community of Horry County. As a true public servant, the ability to support the county as she continues to support her state. There with her mother, the recognition of her dad having served so many for 40-plus years here in the county, committing so much to help others on a daily basis. Liz, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Greg, it was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. We want to thank Liz Gilland and her great commitment to her mother, to the citizens of Horry County, and to her God for making today's Carolina People so special.